Hi, I'm Mark Askelson, Associate Vice President for Research with a focus on national security from the University of North Dakota. IEEE-USA iWork Summit is where aerospace, space, and defense collide with cutting-edge tech. If you are a leader in industry, academia, or government, this summit is for you. You'll hear from DoD, Northrop Grumman, and AFRL Regional Network Midwest, and connect with the people shaping what's next. And I will see you on September 10th at UND.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's IEEE-USA webinar in partnership with IEEE Women in Engineering, The Hidden Rules of Career Growth, Unwritten Secrets to Success. I'm your host, Jonathan Cho. Our presenter for today is Dr. Nozomi Nishimura. Dr. Nishimura is an associate professor in the Mainick School of Biomedical Engineering at Cornell University, where she develops optical tools to study cellular behavior in vivo during disease progression. She earned her PhD in physics from the University of California, San Diego, under the mentorship of Dr. David Kleinfeld, focusing on blood flow in the rodent brain and developing laser-based models of small strokes. Dr. Nishimura joined Cornell in 2006 as a postdoctoral researcher and became a faculty member in 2013. Her lab specializes in intravitreal multiphoton microscopy techniques that reveal how cells function, move, and interact in living tissues. Injury initiates the recruitment and activation of various immune and inflammatory cell types, which, along with local cells, influence the trajectory of disease. Her research aims to develop imaging methods that can simultaneously visualize and quantify the actions of these diverse cell populations. While her tools are broadly applicable, Dr. Nishimura has a particular interest in microvascular dysfunction in the brain. Her lab investigates the role of microvascular occlusions in Alzheimer's disease and neurodegeneration. Recently, her imaging techniques have been adapted to study the beating mouse heart, enabling new insights into single-cell function and cardiac microvasculature. Without further ado, I will now pass it off to our presenter. Welcome, Dr. Nishimura. We're very excited to hear what you have in store for our audience today.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. This is not a talk that I typically give, so it was nice to have the opportunity to think about things that have gone in my career, and hopefully it'll be useful. I'm not a professional life coach or career coach, so this will sort of be about my journey, and hopefully there'll be some insights or at least some amusement in the story. And so you heard sort of the details of my bio, and so I can fill some of that in. And it is, I am in academia, so this has been an academic track. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, and then majored in physics at Harvard. And there I realized, well, I really majored in physics because I didn't have to make many decisions about what I was going to be interested in later. It seemed like physics was something I could major in and put off the decision about what to do later. So later I continued in physics and I went to graduate school at UC San Diego. There I realized that I didn't know a whole lot about biology, but I was very interested in it. And I happened to find a lab that let me work and do some imaging in the brain and look at blood flow. And I really sort of stumbled into this sort of field, but I really fell in love with like the idea that you can see and explore things. And that's sort of where I've been since then. And then I went to Cornell as a postdoc in biomedical engineering, where I continued on this career path and then started looking at Alzheimer's disease. And it was a good marriage of the sort of the physics education and using optics for a biological question. And so, coming to a biomedical engineering place was great because it was interdisciplinary, and I continued my career there, becoming an assistant professor and an associate professor. So from that, in the formal introduction, you might have thought that the career path was pretty straight and like a normal academic career path. But I'm here to tell you that it wasn't really the case. First, though, maybe I'll tell you a little bit more about my research, because that is really what's driving and motivating me. So my lab develops novel optical tools, especially 2 and 3 photon microscopy. And so this does combine some of the physics knowledge and the optics knowledge that I gained in my earlier years, but we apply it to the study of diseases. And what this microscopy allows you to do is to look at what individual cells are doing within the living body. So in our case, everything that we do is in mice or in rodents. But within these models, what we can do is we can actually see things like neurons firing. We can see blood flow in individual capillaries. And this tool has really become sort of a backbone of neuroscience. And then I really love to sort of explore and see. So one of the things that we did was go exploring and apply this imaging technique to other places in the body, like the intestine and now the heart as well. So some of the science directions that have really taken off for us is using this microscopy to look at Alzheimer's disease. And so I'll tell you just very briefly about one of the discoveries that we've had that seems to be quite exciting. And so Alzheimer's disease is usually thought of as a protein aggregation disease, but it is the symptoms that we really care about are cognitive. So as many of you might know, if you have friends, relatives, family with Alzheimer's disease, what happens is that there's a slow loss in the ability to make new memories, and you lose who you are. What we found using this imaging is that in the brain of mice that have something that mimics Alzheimer's disease, we found that there are white blood cells that are stuck in some of the capillaries. And then if you get rid of those white blood cells that are stuck in the capillaries, you can improve blood flow in the brain. And sort of counter to the idea that Alzheimer's disease is just a protein disease, what we found is improving the blood flow actually helped these mice perform better on short-term memory tests. And so that gives the idea that even though we think of Alzheimer's disease as an amyloid beta aggregation disease, there may be a lot that we can do on the symptom side to improve how patients feel and maybe how they remember by dealing with the blood flow side. And so that's actually a pretty exciting finding, and something that was a new direction for us is that there's actually a similar phenomenon that we found in heart as well. And so this idea of improving blood flow might also work in the heart. So I am really excited about some of these scientific findings, and I'm happy to talk more about them. But today I did want to talk a little bit more about my journey, which is really not something that I'm really used to talking about. And so I've given you sort of the academic highlights and the milestones, but today I'm really going to try to talk about the real story and some of the lessons that I've learned, and hopefully some things that would be useful or maybe inspiring for you. So while we usually give sort of like I went to school here and then there and then there and then went on these milestones, I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about some of the things that really made a difference. And I'm going to start with what actually was my mother's journey. And then the fact that in many of my classes, and in physics especially, I was the only girl in my class. Now, being in academia, I'm teaching and doing research and have standing at the front of the classroom or lecture hall or a seminar. There's a lot of sort of leadership opportunities here. And that's actually really counter to my nature, because I am an extremely introverted person. I've always been shy in my life. So like having sort of these leadership positions or being at the front of a seminar hall is not something that is natural to me. And then last, my career, even though I often talk about the milestones in a very linear way, my career path has not really been straightforward, and I've had an unconventional career path. And it's very integrated in my life choices. So I'll talk about these. So the real story today, and then we'll be happy to answer questions about it. My mother's birthday is actually tomorrow, and although she's gone now, I do want to talk about her because she really set up the way that my career went. And it's something that I didn't even realize until I became an adult how important this was. So my mother, growing up in Japan, decided that she wanted to be an astronomer. And in the 70s, she went to college. She decided in a very unconventional way for women in Japan at the time that she did want to be an astronomer. She wanted to have a scientific career. And then so she went ahead and applied to graduate school and went to graduate school in Germany. So that is why I have a picture of Neuschwanstein, and basically took off on her own. And that was really not something that women in Japan did. So she's very inspiring in the fact that she was very brave and that she was unafraid to walk an unconventional path. On top of all this, she basically showed up for the first day of graduate school with me, a 3-month-old baby on her hip, basically by herself. So my father, her husband, had a position at the University of Arizona, where I was born. But it wasn't going to work for her that she had a baby at the time and her husband had another position. And so she decided just to pick everything up and go to Germany and start her PhD career. And now that I look back on it, and having been through graduate school myself and helping other people get through graduate school, serving as a mentor and a PI, it's really unbelievable that she went by herself with a young baby and succeeded in a PhD. And so, I think the lesson for me from my mother is that you shouldn't be afraid of doing things your own way. And she certainly did. And as a child, many times I was like, okay, why is my mom doing this? She's a little bit different than everybody else. And it sort of bothered me. But now I actually realize that this was really freedom. And this was a wonderful way to live. And I've really tried to make my way inspired by her. So it was also important, and I really need to acknowledge that when she went to Germany and just showed up, she got lucky, I think, because she ended up in an environment where there were people there to help her. And without those people, I don't think it would have been possible. And so one thing that was really important was the help that she got, I think, came from unexpected quarters. And I don't think she knew that she was going to have this help. So she just sort of had to have a little bit of make a leap of faith. But her advisor's secretary really stepped in. And then also help came from another unexpected corner. So the grounds people, so the grounds person at the university, his family actually took me in and took care of me and babysat me for many, many hours while she was doing her studies and her research. And so, I can't give advice on how to get lucky and find support like that. But now I would like to give back in cases that I can. The bottom picture is a picture of my mom and dad together from several years ago. And the other thing that was really, I think, really important was that my mom's partner, my dad, he understood that this was not a normal conventional path. And I think for coming from Japan, which is a pretty closed society, a pretty traditional society, to be unconventional like that took a lot of bravery. And so I give both of them a lot of credit for this, and try to follow in their footsteps at not being fearful of being a little different. Okay, so growing up, I majored in physics, and at the time there weren't that many women in physics, and I was lucky in that I was always able to find support and friendship. And I think it's really important to make sure that you do seek those friends out, even if it's not a whole lot of friends. Just a few good friends can be a great support group. And then I think you need to take care of that as well. So these are friends that I currently have, in a ski trip. I also found a lot of joy in having dogs. And if you're not a dog person, I'm not saying that actually you should become a dog person. But it is sort of an example of ways that I found to sort of build a little family, if you will, and a little support network around me. So the picture on the right is our two current dogs, a puppy and an older dog, Dory and Kayla. And so even though I've been a little bit isolated as being a woman in my PhD class, I was the only woman in my PhD class. I was able to, find a couple people that really helped and reach out to them and really use them as well. So I'm extremely introverted and shy, and being successful in many careers, especially in say a research career, a science career, an engineering career, you do have to put yourself out there. And so one of the tips that I got is that I had a hard time speaking in public and especially lecturing. And one of the pro tips that I got was actually from a pro coach. And so that's the first part of the tip, is that learning to use professional help, whether that is coaches or therapists or counselors, they're actually very, very, very useful. And even a short session can help enormously. So an example of a tip that I got that worked for me in terms of public speaking and lecturing in a class sounds kind of goofy, and is not something that I would have ever come up with on my own, but I think it's a good example of something that worked for me. And so the tip was that during a lecture or public speaking, you can really change the way that you engage with your audience just by showing enthusiasm. And the exercise was just to say blah, 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 and not to worry about what you're actually saying, and use this as a way to sort of practice showing enthusiasm. And it feels kind of silly, but the example was that if you just say blah in just a monotone way, blah, 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 that's not very engaging, but you can triple the enthusiasm and the engagement that you have with your audience and your own confidence if you start saying blah in a really exciting way, like blah, 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 blah. And it just seemed so silly at the time, but this little tip really helped me get through a lot of lectures and speeches and things that I just wasn't comfortable with, because it actually did work. And having this little boost changed a lot of things in terms of in terms of confidence for me. And that's really, again, not something that I would have discovered on my own, but it did come from a teaching consultant, and that worked very, very well. The other thing that has helped for me, and also some of the students that I've worked with, in terms of doing things like presentation and being a leader, is to remember that the focus is not necessarily on you, but the focus can be about the subject that you're talking about. So for example, if I'm giving a lecture or giving a presentation, the first thing that sometimes comes to mind is that, oh my goodness, everybody is looking at me and all the eyes are on me. And that sort of pressure is debilitating. It really sort of chokes everything down. But what's really happening is unless you're like a model or an actress or an actor or a singer or something like that, what really people are really interested in is what you're talking about. And it's really good for me to remember that what I'm excited about and what I want to talk about and what I really want to show is the subject. So for example, rather than thinking about what I'm doing and what I'm saying, if I start focusing on what I want to show, like for example, this really exciting movie of our data from the lab that shows the beating heart or cells in a beating heart that are lighting up because you're seeing action potentials actually go by. And the pink here is blood vessels. And this is really exciting because this is the first look at blood vessels in a beating heart at this magnification with the visualization of action potentials. I forget that it's me talking, and I get really excited and into the topic and into the data that I'm showing. And because it's really not, I'm not really thinking about me anymore. I'm thinking about what is in the data, why it's exciting, and what went into it. It's much easier to talk about it, and it's much easier to be forceful about what really is the strength of the data. And I'm comfortable in saying, you know, I really do think this is the best. Whereas if I'm talking about myself, imposter syndrome, all of those insecurities and my own nature like pops up. But keeping the focus on what I want to talk about and what the work is really helps me be assertive in ways that are really not natural for my personality. So the other thing that is helpful too and is related, especially in things like negotiations, is that it's good to remember that in many cases I'm advocating for others. So this is a picture of our lab members from a few years ago. I'm in there somewhere. But what I think is really powerful is when I need to do something, like put my foot down and ask for something, I'm not necessarily asking for me. I'm asking for our whole team, or I'm asking for, say, a science idea or a research idea that I think is really good, and I'm advocating on the behalf of the people that are going to do it. And that helps me, I guess, tap into my inner mama bear or whatever you want to call it. And it really gives me strength and sort of a determination that I wouldn't otherwise have. Okay. So the last thing that I want to talk about is my unconventional career path. This is something that has shaped my whole life, actually. And it's basically a two-body problem. And so my whole career has actually been shaped by my relationship with my partner, Chris Schaefer. And so I met Chris Schaefer when I was an undergrad and he was a grad student. And we met in the lab. And so we got together in a research lab, and ever since have been working and researching together. And so this is not a career path that I would ever advise to anyone. And so the point here is that, you know, life happens, and there are ways to work around it and make it absolutely wonderful. And that's the way it's really been for me. And so I did want to talk about that because, you know, in a scientific career, like going through it with your partner is absolutely not advised. And while I don't advise it, you know, it sort of happened. And so as a undergrad, I was doing research with Chris. And then that is in the lab of Eric Mazur, who was a wonderful advisor. Then as I went to graduate school, I picked a graduate school that I knew Chris would want to go to. And the strategy that I used there was I made sure it was somewhere where there was surf, because he's a surfer. So I ended up at UC San Diego, you know, right over the beach. And then we ended up working in the lab, both of us, in the lab of David Kleinfeld. Also, and we worked very well together, and I think the science went very well together too. So we chose to keep working together. And then the big sort of shift for an academic career in the high risk place is, of course, when you go for a faculty position. So Chris was several years older than me. So when he went for a faculty position, I was just graduating and finishing up my PhD in the lab of David Kleinfeld. And so the next step was actually to go for a postdoc. At the time, we had some really exciting ideas about blood flow in the brain and how it relates to Alzheimer's disease. And it's something that I wanted to work on. It was something that Chris's lab was going to work on. And so I decided to do the very unconventional and perhaps unwise decision of working with my partner and to be a postdoc in his lab. So the probably the more conventional strategy at this point would have been to make sure that I would have discriminated, or I would have differentiated myself and taken a different step and tried to have a career that had a very different trajectory in terms of the science and the projects that we had, because it is difficult to get two faculty positions on the same track. But it's not what we chose. And in the end, we're still together, and we now run a lab that is a joint lab, and that is why we call it the Schaefer-Nishimura lab, because in the end, we were able to secure two faculty positions and run a lab. And so I did want to talk about how we did that, because it really isn't sort of the well-trodden path, and maybe, as I said, maybe not the wise one. So one thing that was important for us, and this is not, I'm not saying that this would work for everyone, but one thing that was very important for us at the faculty career stage is that we were very, very open about when he had a faculty position and I did not, that a dual faculty position place would be something that I wanted to do as well. So that was out in the cards from the very beginning. You know, at the time when we started, you know, everyone knew that all sorts of things could change, but we were very open as like, we are a couple and this is what we want. And so we're very open about it from the beginning. As I said, I chose to stay in the field of my older partner and actually work with him, which was an extremely risky strategy. And I think one thing that worked for us is that we realized this was a risky strategy, and we thought very carefully about what it is that were the disadvantages and decided to mitigate them. So clearly, one of the disadvantages is that having the same sort of the same scientific work meant that I didn't have sort of a separate platform that I could talk about, right? And would have to find positions in the same field. And I thought about this very carefully, and what was happening was that we were very, very excited about this scientific idea, and it was something that we came up with together. And it was also something that I didn't think that we could pursue, or I could pursue, in a separate lab. And so I did weigh, we together, but I myself weighed the risks and the benefits of staying on the scientific path, with the idea that I would have to figure out some way to distinguish myself later. And then when it came time for me to apply for a faculty position, we went ahead and did a nationwide search, and we communicated with everyone. This is our intention as well, and it was well understood that it is really difficult to find and negotiate a position or two positions, even in the place that you already are, without doing this search. And so, you know, I don't think there was any bad blood about this, you know, and this was not a surprise for anyone. And I think we just were able to communicate, this is the way that sort of business is done, and this is how you get these positions. And so I think it was helpful that everybody sort of knew this is what we're looking for, and this is why we're looking for it, and it was all out in the open. And then later on in my career, which might be less relevant depending on what sort of position that you're in, for tenure and for career advancement after the faculty stage, it is also then really important for the junior person to make sure that they have an independent career. And of course, we were still collaborating. And so we, together, and with the help of my mentors, faculty mentors in this department, in other departments, we made the decision to have a strategy for mitigating, again, the risk of not having an independent track record. And the way that I did this was that we did make sure that certain projects were independent and sort of carved off niches of particular kinds of projects and experiments that that Chris would not be on. And so for an example for that is we were just starting some cardiac work at the time, and we decided that was the one that I would lead off on, and Chris would step back from that. We still had a lot of science that was dually run, and I had that as well. But then I had a cardiac direction, and then also, as I said, we started exploring different parts of the body, like the intestine, and developing some projects there. And so I literally had different places in anatomy that I was going that I would market as these are my other directions. Now, it also happened that those directions were also very, very collaborative. So I had good mentors. Mike Kotlikoff was now the president of Cornell University, and also in cardiology. He was a really important collaborator and a tight partner on the cardiac work. And I also had partners on work on the intestine as well. So it was always collaborative, and so is able to show that even though I also had research that was collaborative with my partner, they were also balanced by collaborations of equal importance that were not with my partner, and sort of showed some independence, but also this idea that that collaborations were core to the way that I worked. And last, I did find, as careful to find allies and integrate myself and sort of, again, I guess, market myself around as well. And so those allies were not just people that were friendly to me, but also had value in or had a stake in some of the work that we were doing and that I was doing. And so that included the collaborators on the different projects. Also sort of at the sort of the departmental scale, we also took pains to make sure that I was known to the community that I wanted to get a job in later. And so, for example, when there were opportunities to participate in things that were helpful to the biomedical engineering department before I was faculty, I did that. And so, for example, there were some administrative tasks, for example, such as at the time there was the furniture committee. And this was a committee that was tasked at setting up and choosing the furniture for the offices and the color schemes for the new lab. And nobody really wanted to do that, right? But it was something that it was fine for somebody that was not faculty to help on. And so I helped on these kinds of things. I helped on some like safety things, and eventually helped on some things that were more central and important as well. And hopefully my future colleagues found me helpful there, and that helped then later get a position in that department. At any rate, after tenure, and this is a real privilege of having tenure, we decided that some of these sort of artificial strategies of I guess, differentiating were less necessary. And now I have sort of the luxury of not having to think about these separation strategies as much. And the lab runs as one big lab, and we cover a lot of ground in terms of different topics and things that I don't think that we would do otherwise. Okay. So I guess in conclusion, I hope you've at least been amused or maybe found some interesting tidbits and some interesting advice in my story. It is, my personal journey, and as I said, not an ideal case. And I think the most important thing to get out of this is that it doesn't have to be the normal straight path. And there are some things that you can help yourself along with to be clever about, but in the end, it is your life, and there's always a way to make it work. So last, I want to thank you, and very importantly, everybody that has that I've worked with and that I've gotten support from, and also the folks that have made this seminar possible. It's really been a fun opportunity to really think about the path and reflect on actually what a wonderful time it's really been. So I'd love to take some questions and hear some discussion. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Nishimura. So folks, we are at the official Q&A portion of the webinar. Please post your questions in the comments and live chat section, and we'll load them onto stream for Dr. Nishimura to answer. So Dr. Nishimura, while we're still waiting on some audience member questions, I'll just go ahead and get the discussion rolling with some questions of my own. So I guess for first question, let's see here. So you've definitely gone into your life and your career pretty extensively, as a lot of your history. I guess so. I think for any career, any and all careers, every career has a sort of inflection point, moments where decision, opportunity, or even setbacks reshapes the path forward. So in your journey through academia and research, were there any pivotal moments that significantly influenced your direction or opened unexpected doors?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And there's sort of two things that come to mind. Of course, in careers in academia, the search for the faculty position is sort of the bottleneck. And so there were a lot of decisions that were made there. And I think one of the things that was essential is that we did have to go and get other offers and negotiate. And the act of sort of doing that felt sort of, as I was saying, like we were out in the open, and it wasn't, I think, not a surprise to anyone, but it did sort of feel uncomfortable because it's pitting like one institution against another institution and sort of negotiating back and forth. And so that process was sort of a scary one. And it was really helpful to have mentors that had been through this, and then also people at different institutions that were sort of advocates on both sides. The other sort of unexpected step was, the whole career or the whole scientific direction of cardiac imaging, which is now a big part of what I do. Came from a conversation at a barbecue. And yeah, it was just a sort of a casual conversation where people were sort of talking, and Mike Kotlikoff, who, I didn't really know who he was at the time. So we're just having a conversation about sort of the fun of what he was working on. And that sort of kickstarted a whole direction. So it was sort of like an opportunity that came up out of the blue. And I was really lucky to have just been able to encounter that and then go with it. And I think a big part of that was that the people that were involved, Mike, He was really supportive and very generous with his time. And then I had sort of recognized that this is sort of a golden opportunity, both because of the interesting science, but also because of the sort of the supportive people that came with it. So that was something that that was really helpful and shaped a lot of what I do now.
Fantastic, thank you. So we have received some audience member questions. I'll just go ahead and load them on stream. So this first question, I believe it's from Dr. Joseph Ponley. I hope that I'm pronouncing that correct. Can't see it on stream for some reason. But he said, or Dr. Ponley says, Dr. Nishimura, your life and career are quite interesting. Your presentation has been educative and inspiring. My question, have you jumped onto the AI bandwagon?
Yes, I have, in a couple different ways. So yeah, I definitely use generative AI, especially as like a personal research tool for me. For me, like it's been sort of like an advanced and better search engine, and that sort of thing. And I do like it a lot. And for me, it sort of feels like when Google came out and when Wikipedia came out, it was sort of like, do we trust this thing? I don't know if we trust it, but it's been a lot of learning on my end how to work with it for as a personal tool. On the research side, also I've been using AI as well, and you know, this is coming about with the help of collaborators, and very importantly with students and younger people that want to do this. And so it's really been made possible by students that are enthusiastic and inquisitive, and then also willing to make the connections that I think are necessary. And so, for example, we started using AI, sort of deep convolutional networks, and for some of the image analysis. I think that what was key in there is that we also worked with people, Mert Sambutu, who's now at Cornell Tech, who's an expert in that, and was helping us make sure that we're really testing and working to ensure the validity and the quality of the AI. So yes, I'm absolutely in it. But I think it's sort of like any other tool. I think you have to learn how to use it, and you have sanity checks and quality checks in place.
Absolutely, thank you, and thank you to our audience member for the great question. I feel like pretty much everyone is jumping onto the AI bandwagon. And so, you know, I mean, the fact is it's already here. Might as well take advantage of it. Of course, it's still growing, even as we speak, at a really alarming rate. But as you've said, it is still a tool that there are ways to take advantage of it, and certainly can help you along. But as long as it's not the end all be all as using it for your career, I think that's definitely something that we need to keep in mind as well. So thank you for that. This next audience member question, Sunil, hope I'm saying that correctly. What hidden rules or unwritten secrets can one apply to non-academic, albeit technical career, such as software development or data engineering? Any thoughts?
So I was sort of thinking a lot along some of the things that helped me like really present and be assertive. And I think that's true for any career and any situation that, you know, especially if you're a person that's not used to and comfortable with whether that's public speaking or things like negotiations. I think that is finding ways that you can be assertive, put yourself out there, and be brave out there is really important. So, you know, in my case, I sort of gave the examples of these small tips for public speaking. But I think it's just an example of one way that you can think about making sure that these personal sort of inclinations for, if you are introverted, to sort of step back and things are not getting in the way of making progress for, say, your project or your vision or whatever it is, that it doesn't have to be academic at all.
Fantastic, thank you, and thank you for the great question from our audience members. So that kind of goes into the next question that I want to ask you. So I think building. You've gone a little into about how you are an introvert. I can definitely connect with that as well. I am very heavily an introvert. So I feel like building a presence in academia often requires visibility, networking, and leadership, as you mentioned when you talked about your careers, skills that can be quite challenging for introverts, especially. So, as someone who has spoken about being introverted, how have you navigated these demands while staying true to your personality?
Yeah. So, some of the things that I realized, even as being an introvert, is I really enjoy smaller group or one-on-one conversations about the science, the technical work, those kinds of things as well. And I realized that in both, say, my teaching and also my networking, when I can find opportunities like that, I have a wonderful time. And so I should pursue those kinds of opportunities more. And sometimes that means like setting up like an individual conversation, like with an email or something, rather than going up to somebody in the middle of an auditorium or something like that, or rather than asking a question in a big public forum, making sure that I can find that person later. So in the teaching context, for example, and this might apply to other places where you can sort of set up your projects and things, I did find that I like to work with sort of with projects in a smaller group. And so even with like things like larger classes, I decided to structure things that we always had time for these smaller conversations with a smaller group, even if it's a short conversation. And so you can kind of manage like bites like that, where you can make it a comfortable and a very productive, and in this case, like a very fun environment and forum, by thinking about what you really like to do. And maybe that's a different forum, like you actually do things like writing or having something pre-recorded or something. But those like being strategic about ways to work those kinds of opportunities and those kinds of venues worked really well for me.
Fantastic, thank you. So this next question from our audience member, Matt asks, did you have any good or bad experiences working with professional recruiters? I think professional recruiters. Any learnings you can share?
Yeah, so I haven't done a whole lot with professional recruiting. I was thinking more about professional coaches, like in terms of public speaking, a lot of teaching. I also had a fascinating opportunity through a L'Oreal fellowship, L'Oreal, the beauty products company that you don't, they actually have a fantastic fellowship for women in science. That was really eye-opening. And what I was exposed to there was people that do PR and also marketing. And what I really learned about was the way that a professional marketer, a professional PR person manages sort of the attention of the audience on different aspects of, in this case, whether it's like your personality or the message that you're bringing or the speech that you're doing, is really strategic and intentional. And so I had a really good experience from learning from people that think about this really actively and do it every day to sort of apply those to my personal situation. It's not something that I ever expected that I would learn something like that from somebody that is marketing like a lipstick or a hair product, but it was a really, really excellent lesson.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even I didn't even fathom that there could be a fellowship like that for products or brands like that. So that's really interesting to hear. And that I feel like that really does that insight does really kind of like broaden one's I guess perspective on like what how far their career their aspirations can reach, and potential collaborations as well. I think that's awesome. Thank you. So this next question, actually, from our same audience member, Matt, did you have a spark moment when you knew your profession in research and teaching was exactly for you?
Um, Interesting. So I always kind of liked science, which doesn't necessarily mean that you have a career in it. So I actually did try a different career and decided that I didn't really like it. So I actually didn't mention this, and I don't often mention it in my academic career path, and maybe I should. But in between, before graduate school, I worked what I call a real job, and it was in market research and consulting. And at the time, there were a lot of there was this sort of telecom bubble, and there was a lot of money and glamour and things and related to telecom and these kinds of technologies. So I went and did that for a year. And that was sort of the spark, I guess, when I noticed by absence that I missed certain things quite a bit. Like I was learning a lot of new things in that position. I didn't know about like real-time software. I didn't know about how markets are put together, and I learned so much. But I really discovered that I'm really inspired about learning about nature. And so I really wanted to go back to that. And there are things that I missed, like I feel like some of the things that I study are inherently, well, beautiful. And I think that's something that drives a lot of basic researchers. That there's something about what they're studying that is fundamentally inspiring. And so I missed that, and it was sort of like the absence that made me really aware that that's probably what I should do.
Fantastic. Thank you. Um, this next question, how does one know when to abandon certain approaches and start carving a new, totally different career direction?
Hmm. This is a really tough one for me because I don't like to abandon things.
Mm.
But
And
I think it's a lot of it is you always have to keep looking at what new things are also coming up, and then thinking about sort of how much time that you have, um, and um, and I think um, you just have to sort of really budget and look at how much time you're spending on things that are not necessarily going somewhere, and then look at and focus on what the new things really could be. Because I think there's a lot of emotional attachment about leaving things behind. I'm also sort of thinking about what my mom must have done when she decided to jump across oceans and go to a new country, and just start. And that a lot of what's keeping us back is sort of fear, and the opportunities that sort of open when you let go of that fear can be amazing. So it's just something to think about. I don't know if I have a good other sort of sense of what kind of advice to give, because this is definitely something that is hard for me as well.
I think that's pretty awesome advice, and I feel like maybe abandon isn't even the right word that we should be using these days. I feel like considering how these career paths are just so non-linear these days, you can really go into a lot of different kind of like careers. Your career could go in any different direction. That could take you anywhere. It could even take you back to if you kind of move away from your original path that you wanted to, it doesn't mean you can't go back to that at some point. So maybe instead of thinking about abandoning it, just revisiting it later in the future when it seems more viable to you, or if but I think a lot of these careers are very heavily dependent on your resources at the time, whether it's feasible to even go into that, if that makes sense at all. So
yeah, I agree. And projects that you've left behind and things that you've left behind. I used to do a lot of ballet, for example. They're not gone. They still sort of shape the way that I think, and so they're still there in some ways.
For sure. This next question, Rob asks, hi, do you think some of this advice may be useful for someone who is non-normative? So I guess maybe non or no, neurotypical. Some individuals are very talented individual contributors with strong technical skills, but struggle with personal interactions, similar to introversion. So do you feel like a lot of the advice that you've provided can be applicable to these kinds of types of people, or if not, do you think do you have any thoughts or advice for them?
Yeah. So it certainly could be. And so what I was talking about is a very personal story, right? And so maybe some of those things would work for you, like thinking about not advocating for yourself personally, but for the other things that you are representing or the other people that you're representing. So those could work for you. But I also think the process of finding those for me would be definitely something that works. And those were both thinking very deliberately and doing sort of an analysis of what those interactions were on my own. And the other one was also getting tips from somebody else. And so, there are people that are experts, whether they're just people that are very good at what you do that you see around in your community, but also those coaches. Like if you can find somebody to do some coaching and even just 1 or 2 sessions can be very, very helpful. And so I think like being very deliberate then about the analysis and then seeking advice from people that are positioned to give advice, those can be very useful as well.
Fantastic, thank you. So folks, we are approaching the end of the hour, unfortunately. So we'll just take one more question from our audience members. Let's see. So this final question, teaching is often described as an energy-intensive profession. How do you maintain balance between the demands of teaching and the constant flow of life outside of work?
Yeah, it does take up a lot of time. And I think what was important for me was finding the mode of teaching that I liked best. And a little bit is, privileged because I am able to teach sort of medium-sized classes, sort of on the 60 person level rather than like 500 people. And so that might not work for everybody. But it really, for me, was about structuring the way that I teach the class, the way that I structure assignments, that it really worked for me to make it sort of more efficient, and then also something that I look forward to. I don't really like just giving lectures and things. So finding ways to make it a little bit more about a discussion and like smaller interactions, that made it really helpful.
Fantastic, thank you. And thank you to our audience member for your great question. Folks, unfortunately, we are out of time. I know we could go on and on about this, and I know we have a lot of questions for Dr. Nishimura. Based on your feedback from our post-webinar feedback form, if you would like us to do more webinars like this and even bring back Dr. Nishimura, maybe we can certainly do so. But Dr. Nishimura, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your own career journey and insight on how we can all support our own professional growth. You've been fantastic.
Thank you for a great discussion.
And thank you to our audience members for your great question as well. A few announcements before we close things off today. First, there's less than 2 weeks left to submit your nominations for the 2025 IEEE-USA Awards. Each year, these prestigious awards honor excellence in professionalism, technical achievement, and literary contributions that elevate public understanding of the engineering profession in the United States. If you know someone who deserves recognition, now's the time to act. Nominate a deserving individual before the deadline slips by. Full details on award categories, eligibility, and the nomination process are available on our website. Next up, IEEE-USA is still accepting nominations for its 2027 Board of Directors. This is your opportunity to help shape the future of IEEE-USA and make a lasting impact on the engineering profession. We invite dedicated members to step forward or nominate qualified candidates for leadership roles. The nomination deadline is September 10th. Finally, we're exactly 1 week away from IEEE-USA's iWork AI and Autonomy Summit in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Don't miss this opportunity to learn directly from the leading minds in autonomous systems and research innovation. Make sure to secure your spot now and be a part of a conversation that's driving real change. If you enjoyed the content presented in today's webinar, be sure to check out our extensive catalog of other presentations and publications available on demand on our website for your viewing pleasure. And finally, if you haven't yet, please be sure to like and subscribe to our IEEE-USA social media channels. And don't forget to check back daily for updates on upcoming events. Have a great day, everyone.
私は橋本貴子と言います。In my research, we are developing social media analytics algorithms. Using our technology, we can make our society better. Thanks to IEEE, I have a good network all over the world, and I became a global leader. I believe IEEE will give many opportunities for your career development. IEEE is my competitive edge.